everyone! Ready to see what's next with Unreal Engine? Unreal Engine 4.25 Preview 1 is here, and you can start putting the latest features to the test. Niagara VFX and real-time ray tracing will both be production ready in this release, and you can try out the latest updates to Hair and Fur, the Unreal Insights profiling tools, and general navigation improvements. For a complete list of updates, visit the Unreal Engine 4.25 Preview thread. We invite you to provide feedback on this preview and subsequent releases there. In Unreal Engine 4.25, we're bringing exciting changes to auto exposure, also known as eye adaptation, which improve the workflow and intuitiveness for artists and designers. While we do provide an upgrade path that should maintain visual consistency in the look of your projects, it does break backward compatibility with the existing auto exposure system in previous versions. Dive into our blog to explore how we address challenges with the previous system and how this affects auto exposure for the better going forward. Your free marketplace content for March has arrived. Dash, teleport, and manipulate time with character abilities, access native Android features, arm your players, and more, all now available for download on the marketplace. In addition to our monthly rotation, you can check that your project is marketplace ready with Linter, a new permanent addition. And while you're there, hundreds of marketplace products are now 50% off. Create the project of your dreams armed with loads of handy resources like button prototypes and questing systems, UI elements, sound effects, and beyond. Or build worlds for your players to explore with picturesque beaches and stunning cathedrals to out-of-this-world observation decks. All on sale now through Friday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. And now back to our top weekly karma earners. Many thanks to Clockwork Ocean, The Chaos Spectrum, Tsumi Saki, Surtag Ogun, Solid Gas Games, Fun and Friendly, Vacherka, Shadow River, Carl Caesar, and Koken. You all are the best. Hopping on over to our community spotlights, first up is a set of gorgeous exterior lighting studies by Michael Bonaldi. Following advice from Blizzard lighting artist Mike Mara, Michael lit these scenes while referencing old master paintings. See more of their work and their references on ArtStation. If you're hungry for more information on replication, watch this short replication series for beginners, which lays a foundation for new developers, including how Unreal Engine handles replication, as well as tips, tricks, and pitfalls to avoid when designing multiplayer game logic. Begin your multiplayer journey over on Bry's YouTube. Get ready to be creeped out by Infliction Extend and Cut. Wander through an interactive nightmare set within the confines of a once happy household. Piece together the mystery behind a harrowing series of events while struggling to survive encounters with an entity that relentlessly stands in the way of finding absolution. Now available on PS4 and Xbox One. Thanks for tuning in to this week's news and community spotlight.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Inside Unreal, a weekly show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I'm your host, Victor Broden, and my guests today are pipeline developer James Baber and senior technical animator Kay Vassie. Welcome back to the studio. It was not too long ago that you were here, actually.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I know, yeah, thanks.
Almost a month to the day. And we're back to cover a little bit more about the Blender to Unreal tools that we are developing.
Absolutely. So, so last time we sort of talked about Send to Unreal. And now we're moving on to that second part that we promised, which is what we're calling UE to Rigify. And it's just a little demo and some under the hood sort of show and tell. And so we can jump right in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So like what Kay said, last time we spent time on sending stuff to the engine. This time we're going to spend most of our time inside Blender with this tool working on rigging. Kind of how I did last time, I'm just going to quickly demo what the tool does, and then we'll dive down into it and talk about how it works. So you go into Blender. I'm going to import an FBX, and this is just the mannequin character that's exported directly from Engine. So here we have the mannequin character, and so when you import the mannequin character, the bone orientations aren't correct, or they're just they're different than how Blender's bone orientations are calculated. So we have a tool that will basically take this character, and it will convert the bones regardless of what orientation they come in with. And then now we have a Rigify control rig, and we can now animate on this character and you know, make our animations for Engine. So what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to go over here. I'm going to key the location rotation on his hand. I'm also just going to enable the IKFK controls from Rigify. And then I'm going to jump forward about 40 frames. I'm just going to add another location keyframe. Let's go here, and then let's take his hand up here. Let's go up here.
Doing a little wave.
Yeah, so a little wave animation here. And this is really just to demo the you know, IK controls that we have now with since we converted to a Rigify rig. So now we have this nice animation with him waving his hand, and then all we need to do is send it over to Engine. And so I just had that same hotkey I had in the last stream, and I just sent this animation over to Engine. And so you can see here we are now. We have the mannequin, and he's got our animation on him. So there's a lot that's kind of going on in the background that you're not seeing with this tool, and I'm gonna go over it here. And I have a PowerPoint slide to kind of help explain this a little bit. Because it may seem a little bit much at first, but you basically have these modes on your rig, and there's 5 modes. And so I'm going to go ahead and just pull up this PowerPoint and kind of explain to you why there's 5 modes and what each of them are doing. So, you know, working in Blender, as Blender users, you guys are familiar with, you know, working in modes and things like that on objects, and this is very similar. It's like it's a 3-step process, but we have 5 modes because the original mode, which we're calling source mode, is the original state of your rig. So when you import something, we're considering that just the source. That's your source rig, and then when we get all the way over to the end, which is a control rig, which I was just making an animation with, that's what we're considering control mode. So we have source mode and control mode, which is really just the same thing as your original rig and your Rigify rig, but we're just labeling those things for you. And then the 3 phases in building, all the pieces that you need to get from source to control are the edit meta rig, the FK to source, and then the source to deform modes. And what the modes are doing is all they're doing is hiding and showing certain objects, and they're toggling on certain settings that makes it a little easier for you to edit in those modes. And it's also controlling the state of your changes that you're making to your entire mapping. So we have templates, and I'm going to go into this you know, as we progress. But just to kind of summarize, we have the source, we have edit meta rig, which is we're actually adding bones, we are changing the position of bones, or modifying their Rigify types. And that's what you do in meta rig mode. And for those of you who are familiar with Rigify, I think this will be pretty, or you guys know what editing in a meta rig is. And then the two modes that we kind of introduced are this FK to source and then this source to deform. And both of those modes are modes where you map nodes. So we have what are called bone nodes, and the bone nodes are drawing relationships between the rigs or they're drawing constraint relationships. So based on the mappings you create here, we have our FK bones, which get constrained to the source, so our original rig, and then we have our source rig that gets constrained to the deform. So what we're going to demo first is source to deform, but the reason you need two mappings is if you have animation existing on your rig, you first need to bind all your FKs to your original rig, and then after you have those bones bound to the original rig, then you can copy over animation, and then we need our source rig to be driven by Rigify. So that's why we have a mapping that's source to deform. And so don't worry if this sounds like a little much right now, because as we go, it's going to gradually, I think it's going to kind of clear up, and you'll understand that, because it's, you know, some terminology that's new, and we're just going to go through it one step at a time. But this is kind of the high level overview.
Yeah, so one thing I want to jump in and add to is the slides that James made definitely give you sort of the overview, like we're saying. If we want to get in sort of under the hood and really look at what's going on, it's really not all that complicated. The problem is, as everybody complains about, when you bring our mannequin into Blender, you get the bones sort of sticking out in odd directions because that's the way we had it rigged in Maya. And what the head and tail positioner is representing is the LRAs for the joint, right? The local rotation axes. So if you just create a Rigify rig and then go to your constraints and start trying to constrain things up, it's not going to work because of those LRAs. You can't just, you know, make IK on the Unreal Mannequin, and you can't easily constrain the Rigify deform bones to drive the Unreal Mannequin, which is where sort of the crux of the process, like the good stuff, lives. And so just real quickly, from a rigging standpoint, for all the riggers out there or technical animators, what's going on is there are two sets of empties that are created, and they're created initially in the same space as the bone that they are going to drive, and then they are transformed so that they line up with each other, and then that sort of bakes in those relative offsets, and then the constraining happens between the empties. And so that's where the real sort of glue is between your rigs. We don't really have to go too much deeper into that, but you know, basically, from what I just told you, you could easily sort of create this if you have the resources and time. But that's how we're doing it, and what that allows us to do is sort of give you a reconstructible control rig for a character that you pull from engine. So anything that you get off the marketplace, which was originally sort of the point of doing this, starting with the mannequin, but then any character that you get off the marketplace will run in this process. And right now we're slightly more married to Rigify, but there's no reason that you have to be. And so that's what's going on under the hood. And it's represented really, really well by the node tree and the node editor that James set up. So
yeah, like Kay said, we're using Rigify for this. This is really a mapping system. So we used Rigify because that's free, comes with Blender. But you know, the idea was experimenting with a modular rigging system and mapping between two. And you know, we would like to do other things or more custom things than Rigify. But right now, Rigify was a really easy thing to use, and it's available already. So that's what we did, and this is a work in progress. So there's known issues and things like that we're working through, but we're gonna demo what we have for you today, and hopefully you guys enjoy seeing some progress on this.
While you're bringing that up, I want to say one other thing too. So once James starts going through this second part of the demo, one thing to keep in mind is you're going to hear us say template, and he's going to be using a template and showing you a template. The reason that one button press worked was because there was already a template that existed for the Unreal Mannequin. And so as you get into custom characters, we'll be showing you how you create that by hand on custom characters. But from this system, I mean, James, we can totally disagree, but I think that I would say the deliverable of this add-on is really the template. And so what that allows you to do is if you have work that you're going to be handing off to animators on a small team, they can have the add-on and you can pass them the template for a character that your rigger or that you have set up. And that allows them to go and do essentially what James did with the mannequin in the first part of the demo, which is bring in the template and hit convert, and they're ready to animate and send animation directly to Unreal. And so that's sort of where the power of this comes in, because we're not passing around a character rig file necessarily, which is something that's super common and you get into referencing and whatnot. This is really just about that template and how UE to Rigify works with the template data that we give it. And we're also, you can't forget that this is also about how UE to Rigify integrates with Send to Unreal. And so I'm gonna let James take it.
Yeah. So like Kay said, we have the Mannequin template for you. This is just basically the pre-made template that comes with this add-on for the Mannequin. And so you see that we have the run animation, and we copied it over and all the animations baked over. Now we have a keyed rig. But I like to work with the animation on the rig in this process because you can see the constraints being created. Like Kay said, there's nothing like super complicated about this. It's really just constraining one bone to another. And that's what this node relationship allows us to do. What we want to do for this character right here is if we were to create our own custom template. Well, actually, let me first show you what this template consists of. So if we go here to the actual modes here, you can see that we have our like I showed on the slide, we have this mode where we can go in here and we can tweak the actual meta rig. So we can add, remove, change the Rigify types on this bone here, and that controls the actual process of generating bones. We can go to our FK to source, and here's our node tree for that. So you can see here, here's like our spine mapping. So here's all the spine bones that are mapping up. Right now I have this node right here I made is for the tweaks. So you have the spine tweaks on the Rigify rig that are being mapped to our source. Then here's just the spine bones and different things like that. I have the legs, etc., fingers and arms and hand. So this is what we would be building, or we're going to be building throughout the course of just this demo. And then this is the source to deform. So we're first going to start here, and we're going to build our source to deform mapping. Once we have that, we can basically do what I showed you in the beginning of the demo, is we can animate on our character, and the original source rig will be driven by our Rigify rig. So with that being said, I'm just going to go back here, and instead of selecting the Unreal Mannequin, we're just going to create the whole thing from, or we'll create most of it from scratch here on the demo, just so you have an idea of what this process looks like. So this may look familiar to some of you guys that use Rigify. This is just one of the starter templates on Rigify. So we have like the basic human, we have the quadruped, and then the bird and cat, horse, and I'm gonna zoom out a little bit here. You know, so with 2.8 they added some more rig mods, which was nice in the new Rigify update. But you know, we give you the option to select from one of these starter rigs that are available just with Rigify. So what I'm going to do is, just for sake of time, just do without the fingers.
Yeah, so basic human with no fingers.
And I think that'll give you guys a pretty good idea of, you know, the process.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I'm just going to call this demo. Let's see. So I have a new meta rig. And so now you can see that from my template drop down, I have demo. And this is what we're going to be modifying. So if I look at this now, just to show you, if I go into this mode, you know, first of all, this is too tall. These aren't linked up to any of the bones. Same thing here. So what we need to do is we need to get our meta rig to match up with our source rig. So where you would start is in edit meta rig mode. So for this, I'm just gonna.
Before you start editing the meta rig, I do want to say as well that this is the point where if you jump into your preferences for the add-on, since we're talking about the template and you mentioned that the template is in the pull down. The controls for importing and exporting the template are in the prefs for
Yeah,
UI to
actually,
Rigify.
I can show that real quick.
Yeah, let's just take a look at that.
So we're going through how to build a custom template, right? But once you've built a custom template, what if you want to share it with someone else on your team? So that's why you have these import and export options. So we could go in here, and I can select this demo template. And then I can export this as a zip file. And then I can share that with someone else on my team, be like, hey, I made one for you know, another character. And they just import it, and then now they have that template, and all they have to do is hit the convert button. They can copy over animations. They can animate, you know, with the new control scheme or whatever. And yeah, here they just import here. So yeah, so with that, let's just go into making our own mannequin template. So we're in edit meta rig mode, and now there's a lot of back and forth between this whole process, and that's why when we made this, you know, we thought it'd be good to have modes, because it's just this constant process of, oh, did it work? Does it match up? Does it look right? No, we need to go back and change stuff. And so that's what you'll have to do. But since I've done this a few times, I know that, you know, we don't need those bones, and then this extra head bone can be deleted.
For anyone else that may be in the stream right now that's sort of new to Blender and using this as a sort of tutorial, we should just quickly mention that the reason James was able to select that one chest bone and delete the other side at the same time was because of Blender's X mirroring. That has nothing to do with us. That is all in the tool itself. So
yeah, so like there's some view options or some hiding, or like this in meta rig mode, I automatically turn on XAxis mirroring for you, since you know, characters, like, they should be symmetrical, but you can always, you know, remove that if you don't want it. But it just makes some of that stuff makes it easier and for you to tweak and modify stuff. So yeah.
we should also ask and make sure that graphically on the stream they can see the spheres that you have representing the imported rig from UE4. They're a little bit hard for us to see here.
Yeah, the
on our
display's
screen.
a little.
So hopefully you guys are seeing that, but the bones that James is snapping to are based on the positions of the original Unreal rig that we brought in.
Yeah, and so this is, it's a kind of tedious process, and especially with, larger rigs, it's just one of those things that you have to go through and kind of figure out. Yeah, it's just.
Hopefully only once, though.
Yeah, so hopefully once you get it how you want it, then you should be set, and it'll be as easy as what we demoed in the beginning. Is just you hit convert and you're ready to go. So there's our clavicles.
And would this be a similar workflow in case you were working on a different skeleton that was not Manny?
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
So yeah, this will work exactly the same for any rig that you're pulling out of.
Yep.
Not even Unreal, any application.
Yeah, this is, again, the thought process behind this tool and workflow is really so that if you have the ability to get bones and weights out of your game engine and in an FBX format or however you could import it into Blender, if you have bones and weights, this should hook up to Rigify in this case and allow you to move it and animate it and get it back to your engine of choice. We make it a little bit easier to go to Unreal, of course, but it's meant to be somewhat generic in that way.
Yeah, and sometimes I like to turn on the mesh to see where some of this stuff is. But you'll see me do that. Sometimes I'll toggle the mesh on, sometimes I'll toggle it off.
I mean, you're really making good progress live, pretty quickly. It wouldn't take someone that long to.
Yeah, I mean, once you're familiar with the tool, this is not a super long process, which is great.
Just letting everyone know that we'll cover questions a little bit later at the end of the stream.
Absolutely, yeah.
Unless they are relevant immediately to what James is working on, then we'll take them as they come. But
yeah, this demo, obviously we have, you guys got a little bit of a preview of what you can do with importing animation, which is, super powerful. And we will be going over that as well as maybe some non-mannequin characters, hint, hint, in the next stream or so.
Yes,
so we want to leave plenty of time today for questions because this is probably going to generate at least a few.
And we do have another stream planned at the end of the month.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so what I like to do sometimes with this is you can see that there's a lot of overlapping bones here from the other characters. So I usually like to go into edit mode with both rigs, and then I'm just going to start hiding the ones that I find that are IKs, so I don't get confused.
What's the keyboard shortcut for that?
You just go back to object mode, select both of them. Yeah, and if people don't know, in 2.8 now they let you get into edit mode with multiple objects, which is nice. Yeah, and so I'm going to just snap that there, and then I'm going to snap this to the ball of the foot, and then I'm going to turn on that mesh again to see where the heel is.
So you're doing this manually with the skeleton in the 3D viewport, and then the tool will create the nodes for you, and you sort of use them more as a visual reference to what you did earlier when you were hooking up the
So yeah,
bones?
we'll get to the part where we're creating the nodes. So we actually create the nodes,
Okay.
and we define those relationships. But once we have those nodes created, they're saved with the template, and then people can just click that convert button. Yeah.
And generally, you do want to have a similar skeleton that you're working on for for your characters in the game, right? clearly you're not using
Yeah.
a horse template or
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you're going to do a quadruped, you know,
Mhm.
you still sort of should, in this case, be a little bit familiar with Rigify's versions of those characters and or character types.
Yeah.
And pick the appropriate one.
Yeah, and like for those of you who don't or haven't used Rigify before, it basically they had things called samples, and each chain has a Rigify type. So if you're in pose mode, you can see that the Rigify type here is a super limb, and there's some settings here, and so that's how it knows how to build those correct, you know, IKFKs on the leg or on the arm, or you know, we have the spine, which is a different type called you know, basic spine. Yeah, that's Rigify stuff, and they have their own documentation and stuff for that. But I thought I'd just touch on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. We are definitely not sort of giving Rigify instructions here as far as any of that goes. Hopefully you guys, you know, when you get to use the tool, will be pretty well versed in Rigify and able to...
and there's some nice tutorials online.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm looking at this, and I think, well, yeah, and I think I got the head and stuff. So this is looking pretty good to me. I'm just going to save this, and we can always go back to it. We can always go back to that mode, but I'm going to go ahead and just switch over to source to deform, and that's actually looking pretty good to me as far as you know, the structure of the mannequin skeleton. And so now it's just a this is where kind of the real like meat and potatoes of this tool comes in, and that's the actual, you know, quickly and rapidly building constraints with you know, being able to see it in visual nodes. And so I will show you that process. So we have a completely blank node tree right here.
Oh, and that's a good thing too, in case people change their UI. I've been playing with this a lot, as you can imagine, and I always end up moving things in the UI or hitting something I'm used to and sort of having to get back. So I do think it's a good idea to show them in the node editor, the pull down right there that allows you to choose like what gets created, which is the bone remapping nodes.
Yeah, so
that's going to get added to your Blender session.
Yeah, so you now have the bone remapping nodes editor view. What happens is you get this one node tree instance, so that will automatically get generated for you. And if you have this window on your active screen, that will become the active tree. So you shouldn't have to worry about setting that drop down unless you open up the window. You know, you flip workspaces and open up another window or something. But if that's the active tree, it's just going to toggle that on and off for you. But on this tree, we're going to start adding some rig nodes, and the way we do that is we just select which nodes we want to constrain to our deform bones. So those of you who don't know, Rigify has the actual control bones like your IK, FKs, and then the IK and FK controls are driving these def bones. They have that postfix def in front of them, and that's for deformation. And so that's what's actually deforms your rig. And there's no skinning here, but we're just going to constrain our source rig directly to the deform bones, so it's going to basically get that same effect. So what we do is all these little red bones here are our source bones. So we basically need to do red to green. We want to take just this upper arm L, and we want to map it to just this def upper arm. So I'm going to hit Alt-1, and I get two options from my pie menu, and I'm going to do link selected. So you can see here now our arm is linked, and as we start linking this arm up, you'll see that it's starting to constrain to that rest position. That's another thing that we do is we pop this into rest position, and then if you have a skeleton with animation, you can start seeing it's going to be confined. And when you're in this mode, you should be able to, when you're finished, you should be able to scrub through your entire animation, and your rig should not move at all, because it should be completely constrained, if you've done it right, to your deformation rig. So we're just going to continue linking these. And so now we have a full arm linked. And this is just good practice to just organize your node tree, because you can get a lot, especially when you get to bigger rigs, and it's important to stay organized. So we have these two operations, and we're working on adding some more to even speed up this process. But what I like to do is hit this combine nodes, and then there's also align node sockets, which I'll show you later. But I like to just add this to my quick favorites. Actually, I'll add both of these to my quick favorites, and I'll just hide that so I have more space. But yeah, so we have this. I'm just going to hit F2, and I'm going to rename this to left arm. And I'm not going to be this thorough during the entire presentation here, but I wanted to show you that this is how you should do it. You should combine stuff, and then you would rename it appropriately, so that when you go back to it, or when someone else takes a look at your tree, they can figure it out. So I won't do too much of that, but I just wanted to let you know that that's there, and that's the ideal way to work. And then another thing to note is you have Rigify calls them tweak bones. On this particular mannequin rig, they call them twist bones. So there are some twist bones that we need to map to our deformation bones. And I usually like to keep those in a separate little node group. So if you look here, and this is where you have to, attention to detail is important. You can see there's two bones here. This one is a twist. So we need a twist to actually be mapped to another node here. So now our twist is mapped, and then also there's another arm twist right here in the middle.
What's the shortcut you're using to?
And I'm just hitting Alt-1. Alt-1 brings up that pine menu for linking.
Which is a part of the add-on when you're in this mode.
Okay.
Yeah. So you will have access to that when you're in this mode in this add-on.
Yeah, and then I would just combine. And what I do is I would just name these tweaks. Left tweaks. But you get the idea. So I usually like to just separate out what are my actual source bones, and here's the source twist bones, and here's the source or the control tweak bones. So that's just organization. But let's just go ahead and do the other arm. And I'll go a little faster.
This is still a lot faster than a different workflow, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It really does not take long to get something usable, especially if you're talking about, fast prototyping, or if you want to get to, if you're in a group project or you're doing something for your school and you want to get to gameplay stuff and you want to get to figuring out some of those things, this is really a quick way to get it in there.
But there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to use it in production for a large project as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and like we were saying too, is this isn't just an Unreal to Blender thing. Like if you have any DCC that is making a rig and those local rotation axes are different than Blender's, this can be that translation layer as far as you could have someone working in Maya, they hand something over and then you convert it, and as long as you've already made your mapping, they can make animations and you can pull their animations in.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I know the Tech Anim group gets so tired of hearing me say this, but it's ultimately when you break all of the DCC apps down and you get to just 3D graphics, it's bones and weights. It's whatever that relationship is, wherever it came from, be it a DCC app, which for anybody watching that doesn't know, that's like Maya, Max, Houdini, Cinema 4D. Are there more? Am I missing? Probably missing one besides obviously Blender, but that's what we mean when we say DCC apps, and or any of the game engines. Bones and weights. That's all you need. And I mean, technically you don't need weights, but I don't know too many people that really love weight painting. I know we have a few here that love it, but it's kind of a rare find.
And so you can see as we're constraining it, he's starting to basically get into that rest position, which is a nice indicator that we're doing this correctly.
Once you're going, you just don't want to stop, do you? It's like
Yeah.
just a little bit, just one more bone. Just two more bones, just two more.
You gotta catch them all, right?
Right, you got to catch them all. You got to rig them all.
And here's another one of those areas that's a little confusing. So you gotta watch the names there. That's an IK, which we don't want to map to. And then that's just another just regular bone.
I definitely too. While James is sort of finishing this up, I would reiterate to get under the hood with Rigify itself, even if you don't have this add-on from us, to understand how adding, using one of their templates, adding bones to that, how that works, the types. He and I were just working through one of the examples we're going to show in a later stream, and it was us figuring out what those options in Rigify were and how they affected everything, and so that's really important.
Yeah, it's really just a game of learning the sample types and what the settings do. Yeah, the mannequin, actually, we didn't have to really change that much on the Rigify settings, or really we didn't really change any settings besides deleting and removing bones. But sometimes for a more custom rig, which we're going to talk about those later, you have to do that, and so you might get a little more exposure to just those settings and stuff in Rigify. But it's important to know how that works. And so he's looking pretty good to me. I'm gonna scrub through the timeline real quick, and see it right there.
Yeah.
His chest is moving, and that's because these two clavicles weren't mapped. So that's why I like doing it with animation. Is you can catch things like that pretty easily when you have animation on it. So yep. So now I'm scrubbing through. I don't see anything moving, and I don't even think the fingers were animated anyways. So yeah, I think we're good. So I'm gonna just test this out, and there's no no need to worry about getting it right the first time, because it's just toggling through the modes, and if something's not right, we'll fix it. So I'm gonna go over to Control, and you can see now there's the mannequin character.
And James, while you're going through this, let's talk about what is going on with the template at this point after you've started doing this work.
So yeah, so basically what the template is, and let's turn this off. Yeah, okay, so there we go. We have an arm. There's your arm working, and if we do our legs, there's that foot roll. So you can see very quickly we built the mannequin template, and now we don't ever have to do that again. We just hit that convert button, and then the only other thing we'd have to do is build a mapping to the FKs so that we can ensure that we can pull animation off of an existing rig. But back to what you were saying, was that with the templates, this whole process is possible because when you switch to control mode and you're converting, what the tool is doing is it's saying, okay, so I'm going to constrain everything. I'm going to constrain all my FKs to my source. I'm going to go through a baking process, so I'm going to get all those keyframes, and then I'm going to delete all those constraints. I'm going to switch to source to deform mode. I'm going to constrain everything to that, and because that has keyframes, that rest pose is not just the blank rest pose. It actually is the action pose, because it's not in rest pose in the baking process there. So now it's just constraining to that run animation that you made, and then you're driving the original, but you also have the keyframes from the run animation. And so at that point, it's just, okay, I'm going to modify the arm or something like that, delete the keyframes that I didn't want, but you have the animation information.
And so once you've got it to this point and your sort of quote-unquote rigging is done, which is really more template building for your project, production, team, etc., you just want to make sure that you export it and save it.
Yeah, and that would just, like we said before, you just go out there, export that template, and you could share that with, other people on your team. So we can go into the second mapping, or we can do questions, or
yeah, what are our questions looking like?
Most of them are relatively generic, but we can go through a couple of them if
let's
you'd
take
like.
some questions.
They were curious if you were planning on making a live link with Blender like the one for Maya.
Yeah, so I think we kind of touched on this a little bit in the last stream. Is what we're doing is just like an FBX export import, and you can get, and I think people can kind of seeing that you can get pretty close to the same effect as the live link. The advantage of doing an actual FBX file is that it may not be as responsive as far as I can move an arm and instantly see it moving in Engine in real time, but you can tweak the animation, export it, and see it update. But the big benefit is you can actually modify meshes, you can modify the actual state of the object, like we can modify the weights and all that stuff that you're not going to be able to do on just a live link where it's linking certain objects and things like that.
So even if you had the live link, you'd still want a workflow like this to be able to fully work around, the character. Or
Absolutely.
I mean, live link's really great for setting up scenes and stuff, and having, say I have lights in Blender and lights in Unreal and things like that. But when it comes to actually modifying the meshes, modifying the weights, things like that, like you need to pull in a new asset. And so that's just kind of why we're doing it this way.
I think we touched on this a little briefly in the last stream, but they're curious if the add-on will support materials as well.
Right now it doesn't, so it's just whatever FBX whatever you can export with an FBX file.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do. For the most part, you should be building your materials in Engine.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, it's a good thought.
Yeah.
Someone's curious why you would use something like this over Mixamo. Or Mixamo.
So this would be great with Mixamo.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So with Mixamo, I can bring in a character, right, and they might be in an idle pose or something, but I want to customize that. So when you bring in a Mixamo character, you're going to have a kind of this same-ish dilemma. The bones don't come in quite as messed up as they do when they're coming from Unreal, but they're you want a control rig to move those. So I could take my Mixamo idle animation and say, I want to make him move his arms or something. I can just click the convert button and then edit my Mixamo animation to customize it just a little bit.
Just like you did with the mannequin.
Just like I did with the mannequin, and then we could send, you could send that over to Unreal.
The other thing too is that, the idea behind UE to Rigify and send to Unreal is to sort of work within the Unreal ecosystem to a degree as well. And so, you know, we're very sort of focused on the marketplace and what's out there for our Unreal users and licensees in the marketplace to be able to get down. So
that was actually my next question.
Yeah.
Was is it possible to retarget marketplace animations to Rigify?
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. That's
And
what
yeah,
we're doing.
That's
yeah.
what this was designed for. Yeah.
Yeah. And the same, there were a couple of questions regarding sort of motion capture files. You know, you name it.
Sure.
If you have animations in Blender, you can use UE to Rigify too.
So yeah, again, I'm gonna sort of go back to that bones and weights things, right? So it's just very bottom level, like low level 3D graphics, bones and weights. And if you have a way to get those moving, be it mocap, be it some proprietary format, if you can get those bones and weights moving inside of Blender in some cohesive way, it's really no different than bringing in an FBX. We're not, you know, once you import an FBX of the mannequin or some other character from the marketplace, there's no magic there. It's just Blender doing its thing, and then we're sort of respecting it and hooking Rigify up to it in a novel way. And so,
Well, yeah, and that's a good point that she mentioned with the format is with you just need the weights, and so you could Blender, you can import GTLF 2.0.
Absolutely.
So you could import a rig with that, and it would work the same way. You know, the positions of the bones would be different, but it doesn't matter because it's just the joint position that matters.
Yeah, any character that you bring into this that's not the mannequin, you're going to have to do the process that James just demoed, right? Which we have on the docket to show you guys with some fun examples soon. So yeah, it's pretty open to if you can get a model and it animating inside of Blender, I don't see why you couldn't get it in, right? And I would that gets into another area too, where as a AAA game dev studio, when you're talking about sending materials and things like that via these tools, currently the UE to Rigify relationship with Cinta Unreal is a very sort of tech animation related tool set and relationship. And so we're looking at it from the way that we work, which is very sort of compartmentalized, where you're going to bring in, as the animation and tech anim group, you're going to be bringing in a skeleton through a scale mesh, and you're going to be setting up things like physics, and you're going to be setting up things like anim BPs. And so we are not trying to design materials in this tool and get them into UE. That is not what we are sort of coming at this. That's not the angle that we're approaching this from. We're actually coming at it from more of a tech animation side, where I need to get this character asset in there. I need to make sure that it has a skeleton and a physics asset and all those sorts of things in engine, first of all. And then I need to move it. How am I going to move it? Or I'm going to have to outsource to this group who has a lot of animation potential, but they don't have Maya licenses and they can only use Blender. How in the world are they going to get animation into my game and I can't give them Maya licenses, right? Well, you send them a template in this add-on, and ultimately they just need to be able to get that animation into game, right? And so that's really where we're coming from.
They were curious if this will tie in with Control Rig at some point.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. That's hard to answer right now. Control Rig is really awesome, and it's super cool, and it is on its way. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see when that really sort of gets to its ultimate form. It's going to be amazing though. Like the users of UE4 are super lucky heading into the future. So we'll take a look for sure.
They did ask about quadruped and four-legged models or creatures with multiple numbers of limbs. Still same workflow.
Hang in there.
Yeah.
Hint, hint. Yeah, that is totally possible and totally happening at my desk right now. And so we will have it for you very soon.
More generic question. Is the tool geared more towards studios versus solo indie devs?
It could be either. Honestly, I mean, I gave sort of an off-the-cuff example right now where you have a studio that may be in a position to reach out to you know, a studio or group who have all the talent in the world and none of the budget for other 3D software. This will allow you to sort of, you know, give them a game asset and animate it. And so, you know, that animator could be a student. That animator could be a 20-year veteran of the animation industry and game industry. And as long as they know how to animate in Rigify and know how to, you know, set keys and you know, get you blend files, you can get that animation in your game. I don't see why it would stop you.
So I think what we're saying is if they'd like to practice and get prepared for the workflow that will eventually be available, they should start practicing with some of the basic Rigify tutorials that Blender have available.
Absolutely, yeah. If you're, I will say this tool, again, as I mentioned, is sort of, it's a lot of tech anim with a little bit of animation on the side as far as what you're going to be dealing with. And so it would be good if you're going to be sort of, I'm going to use air quotes, but a power user, to jump into Rigify as it currently exists in the latest release of Blender and understand how those rigs are set up and the phases that you can get them into as far as building, you know, generating your rig based on the meta rig, what that does to the assets in Blender, what that looks like, what you're actually doing. Rigify generates a ton of bones or joints, and they each have a different prefix, and they're sort of used for different things. And so as much Rigify knowledge as you can possibly get, that's just going to be advantageous. I mean,
and for people that, like, you know, I don't know what Rigify is, what we're talking about, and I should have mentioned this before, is
good call.
we
Yeah.
have this Rigify add-on activated. And so that's an add-on available with the latest version of Blender. And so you just need to activate Rigify, and then you just need to basically learn how this add-on works to accurately build that control rig. But I should have mentioned that we have this add-on activated.
And you do, just to underline and star what James is saying, like, you do have to activate Rigify every time you get a new version of Blender.
Yeah, by
I
default,
always
it's
forget
inactive.
that. Every
Yeah.
time I go I'm like, oh, a new version of Blender, and I download it, and it's like, oh my God, this is so great, I can't wait to get in here and play. And then I realize, I'm like, oh, I didn't do any of the add-ons, I didn't do any of my preferences, and so it's always, you know.
Do you have a good workflow for that, or is it normally
I mean, I'm sure there is some awesome workflow, and I bet James knows it, but for me, it's like crap, I forgot, and then I just sit there and do it and save it, and, you know, I do it once, and I try to remember next time I got to do that, and I always forget.
right? I think we walked through most of the questions I had for now.
Okay,
Cool.
Should we keep moving? Or?
I mean, we've got a little bit of time
Okay.
left, so we should probably, you know, show him some animation on this guy and,
Okay.
and drop into Engine.
Yeah, let's do that. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to open up a new file. And one thing to note is that template is not saved in your Blender file. It's actually cached in the add-on. So all that stuff we worked on is still there.
Chat did ask if you saved.
Yeah, and so every time I switch a mode, it will save the state. So if I'm in edit meta rig mode and I switch, my meta rig gets saved. If I'm editing some nodes, I switch to another mode, the nodes get saved. Even on links, when links are made, it gets saved. So there's a you know, it's saving at every point basically.
But just to reiterate, that's saving in the add-on, caching in the add-on and the template.
Yes.
Yes, so not the blend file. So what that does, it's a little bit weird to think about, but what it's actually, the advantage there is, like I said, the deliverable of this is really that template for this character, and that allows you to just send that zip file to someone who has the add-on, and they can load the model with the bones and then just activate the template, and they can rig the character and animate it. Now you can save, like, that's one thing to note as well. If you're animating on a blend file and you need to, you know, walk away or you get a crash or anything like that, your animation is saved in the blend file, and you can always get it back. But we're not storing any of that in like a sort of monolithic blend file or anything like that. It's all about the add-on and the template.
Yep. Yeah, so I think how we'll finish this off is just taking animation from Engine, importing it, and then modifying it, and then sending it back over to Engine so you can see kind of how that looks. So what I've done here, this is a little bit of a review from our last stream, but I'm using the import on reference skeleton option, and I just pasted in the full path, the game path, to the skeleton I want to map to, and this is mapping to the mannequin. And then I also am activating that integrate with UE to Rigify add-on. So that's basically going to make it behave slightly differently, and it's going to do some animation transfer on that send to Unreal process. So it just makes that whole iteration loop faster and you know, less steps in between. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, actually, I'm going to keep Blender maximized for now. I'm going to import FBX. Just going to import the run.
And this run was exported via UE4 from the
so
third-person starter
there's
project.
absolutely nothing changed with this file other than it was just came directly from Unreal Export FBX. So go here. I'm going to select the skeleton that I want to convert. I'm going to use the Unreal Mannequin Template, and then I am just going to rename this action here. So you can see I have this one action. One thing is to note is that the engine doesn't like those, it doesn't like the pipes, those pipe characters. So I'm just going to rename this to third person.
Realized I don't actually know what to call that. Is it a pipe?
Yeah, pipe.
Pipe.
Yeah.
I use it all the time, but
Yeah,
I think it's third person run, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, third person run, and
that does match the name of the asset in UE4.
yeah. So at first, I'm just going to send this over to our. You can see where this is going to go. This is just going to go over to the untitled category with in the animations folder, and then after that, we're going to put it. If everything looks good, I'm going to just send it on top of the actual blueprint, or the location that the blueprint is mapping to. So we have the run cycle, we have the name. I'm just going to hit convert, and you can see now we have our full run cycle in our Rigify controls. I'm going to turn on the IKs. We could do something kind of fun. I'm just going to see, grab this. And actually, his I don't want these keys on his hand, so I'm just going to select these, deselect those, and I'm just going to, you can see right here what I have. So I'm just going to select those, and I'm going to delete them. And then I'm going to hit Alt-R, and I'll just hit Alt-G. So now we have the hand right there.
Ouch. That looked like it hurt.
Yeah, he has issues, I think. So So yeah, we can do the same wave animation that we did at the beginning. And this is, I think, a 16 frame animation. So I'm just going to have him like rock his hand or something as he runs. So
We're using Blender 2.82, right?
yeah, that's correct.
2.82. Yeah, I thought I saw you updating it yesterday.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean I'll just add a location. So there's our animation. So it's you can tell it's modified from our original animation, and so what we're going to do is we're just going to send this over.
And you were using the shortcut that you set up
And yeah,
earlier.
that's just that Control U that I had set up earlier. And so you can see, and I usually like to do this where I'll export to another category before I overwrite that relationship in the on the actual character blueprint. But that looks correct, like what we were trying to do. So now I'm going to actually just change it to where that's going to go on top of that animation here. And it's always good to double check your name, third person run. So I'm going to, this is just what I like to do. I like to copy the reference, but I'm really not copying the reference. I'm just going to get part of the reference does contain a file path. So you can see it goes to the animations folder, and then that's the actual path game inside your...
Yeah, a nice clarification is that game essentially means the content folder.
Yes.
Right, yeah. And then with the actual reference skeleton, that is the full path. So I'm just copying the path, the skeleton.
The reference path.
The reference path, not modifying at all, just pasting that in. So now, since our names are the same, we should just overwrite that file. So let's just go over here and export again. And then I'm going to go ahead and hop into the game. And you can see there's our character, and he's waving his hand as he runs. So we just took a animation that was pulled out of the engine. So you could do that with anything you get off the marketplace. Just export an FBX, bring it into Blender, modify it, and then send it right back into your game on top of the skeleton that may already have a control system and blueprints set up and stuff like that. So you could very quickly modify and iterate on your game.
Are we expecting a many wave marketplace pack animation?
Animated by James.
Every single
Yeah.
default animation, but Manny's waving. Yeah, very welcoming, Manny. Is it one of the questions we received was, is it possible to export the preserve volume from the armature to help the character deformation?
So there's nothing as far as I assume that you're saying that you would have some kind of a volume setup like in Blender to...
You mean the preserve volume option on a character that you rig in Blender? Probably.
Probably.
Right now, that's not specifically set up. It's something that we might look into. I assume that you mean like if you, in Blender, when you do preserve volume and you grab a joint and you stretch it, you sort of get a squash and stretch effect on the mesh that you've skinned.
There is, so like in Rigify, they have like the actual stretch controls, and they have a relationship set up where it's it's preserving some kind of a state of the actual rig. So like I still have it on, but
I think
if you see like
that's
there,
your preserve volume.
that's I believe what they're referencing. So if you set that up, or if you have that in Rigify, then you can do that?
So that's just going to boil down to non-uniform scale data on your joints, which is supported in UE4, so it should work. Although non-uniform scale in certain transform spaces and relationships gets super tricky, so you're going to want to be careful with it, and you're going to want to test the crap out of it. But as long as it's non-uniform scale animation data that comes in on a joint, it should work.
Yeah, and my answer, it would be just if you can see it, if you have it working in Blender, and you can export an FBX file and you can import it into the engine, then it will work, because that's what the process is. So if you're not having issues with that now, you shouldn't have issues when you're doing it through this workflow.
I think we covered this last stream, but they were curious if shape keys will work.
Yeah, so in the last demo, or in the last stream, we did shape keys. So if you guys are interested in that, you can always go back and look at that last one. Near the end-ish of the stream, I talked about importing morph targets.
Yeah, and if you need to force open the import settings, remember there's that option in the preferences to do so if you need to check on the morph target import for your scale mesh.
And I'm going to throw a little bone out there and let everyone know that we do transcripts for all of our videos. And so in case you're looking, would like to only see sort of the shape keys portion of the last stream, and I think we were here for almost 2 hours last time, and if you don't want to scrub through that, you can go ahead and look at the transcript and just Control-F, download that PDF file, do Control-F for shape key or morph or any of those search terms, and you'll see the timestamp right next to that in the document, and then you can go to the YouTube video and find the portion of the stream that we talked about that. And that's not only for shape keys, that applies to everything, and any of our live streams, you'll see a transcript a couple of days after the stream goes up on YouTube. And it's a good way to sort of find the part of the stream that you were most interested in, or even wondering, like, did they mention this at all? You can go ahead and search for that. We covered pretty much all of the sort of technical questions that we'll be able to answer here today. But Chad was curious how long you both have been animating was the question. But I believe, James, you more so do animation as like a part of the technical pipeline, right?
Yeah. So Kay is a technical animator. I'm just what my title is a pipeline developer, and basically what we do is we talk to people like Kay, and she just describes a process, and then I figure out a way to automate that, and to like, how can I make that what you're saying happen in code, or do something that you're doing that's repetitive, just make it one click or something like that.
Right.
And so some of this I have to talk to her and get her expertise on subjects like animation, and then I figure out a way to make that happen in the tool.
You take all my nasty code in pieces and put it all together so it looks as cool as what we're showing right now. is what you mean? You were about to say Justa. You're about to be like, I'm Justa. That is not a phrase you should say.
This is
it's
magic
awesome work.
to
It's
everyone.
magic work. Yeah, it is. Me, I've been animating and rigging a long time. I got my first job in the film industry in 2000. So that's all we need to say about that.
That is many years before I ever touched any DCC tools of any kind. Excited. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Just to reiterate a little bit as well, that we are covering, it's not available, the tools are not available currently. We're going to make them available this year. Yet. They will be available. We're currently, James and a couple of folks are still developing them, and we'd like for them to come out in as good of a shape as they can be. So stay tuned. We do have another stream planned in 2 weeks, actually, where we will be covering more of the custom armature, quadruped-esque, more less limbs when it comes to your skeletons. And with that, was there anything else as part of your presentation that you guys wanted to go over?
I think that was it.
Yeah,
I hope everybody
enjoyed it and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope everybody likes everything that we're showing. We're super excited about it.
Yeah.
We think it's cool, and so hopefully you guys do too.
And I guess to reiterate again that we're aiming on the sort of static mesh and the skeletal mesh / animation pipeline right now. Materials, particles, etc. All the other things that you can do in Blender, we're leaving that for to be done in Unreal for now.
Yeah, I just to sort of put a pin in that. Again, sort of the workflow, at least we have in the game making side of this company is, you know, if you're going to be doing, there were some questions last time about like, hey, the scale might be off for doing this physics simulation in Blender. That's something that we traditionally wouldn't do. I know that there are options to do that with the DCC app, but that's where the engine comes in for us. That's where if anything's going to be dangling, deforming, cloth, anything like that, we're going to handle that in UE4. And so since that's the ecosystem we're working in, it's not something that is really high on our list to handle to make sure that like cloth works with this, because for games we're going to be setting it up in our engine. And so and to kind of elaborate on that a little bit, is it's not that this add-on will break your physics simulation or anything, or it's incompatible. What that just means is you're going to have to break up that process. So if you want to make a baked cloth simulation and you want to have a unit scale of 1, then you would do that. And then you would import it into your scene that has this unit scale set by this add-on. Or you can activate the add-on and set your scale back to 1. Really the only reason you need that scale factor is for things that come directly from, we know from Unreal, but it could be different from other DCCs. But if you have that scale factor, you'll have scaled keyframes. And so it's kind of one of those things where, pick your poison. You could try to keep it in 1 and you could fight remaking all your keyframes, or you could just do this simple option. If you want to do physics, go ahead and turn that back to 1. Just make sure you use your measuring tool and everything's scaled up before you export. Yeah, again, the thing that we're really trying to accomplish is, hey, I've got this animation pack or this animation from UE4, and I want to get it, I want to change it. I want to alter how the run looks. I want to alter how the weapon hand pose is. How do I do that as quickly as possible in Blender?
It's nice because it's free.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so are many of the marketplace packs. Just to read it again, there was another question that came in. If until it gets released, for people who are looking to learn and eventually adopt this workflow, learning how to use Rigify would be the suggestion, right?
Absolutely. And I'm going to throw on top of that as well the nonlinear animation sort of functionality in Blender, as well as the action editor and how that works with character animation. Is another, or object animation for that matter, because you're doing a lot of work with that in the add-on, and I think it's important to understand what's going on there in the add-on.
Yeah.
So
be helpful. And in our second part, I think we'll touch on a few more things in Rigify, and then things like the non-linear animation editor. But I know that a lot of people may not be familiar with that area of Blender, and that's basically how Blender ties animations to an object. That's how that relationship is made. So it's just important that you understand that. And so we have another stream and some other things like that we can kind of dive into a little deeper. But yeah, like Hay's saying, learn Rigify, know what what the nonlinear animation editor does and why that's important. Those are all good things to know.
I did have one more question for you since we have a little bit of time.
Of course.
Does Send to Unreal handle setting up bone hierarchy for leg and arm IK? By default, Rigify makes that tough with tweak bones.
Setting up leg and arm IK.
I think I kind of missed the question.
Does Send to Unreal handle setting up bone hierarchy for leg and arm IK?
And on an import, is that what they're asking, or?
I think the word that's sort of getting me in there is setup. Because none of the add-ons here are going to really help set that up. If you need to, well, let me think. I guess the best way to answer a question in that sort of vicinity is to say that if you need to alter the meta rig to control something, like if you need to add IK bones to the meta rig to account for the IK bones that come in on your character, because the IK bones are useful in engine for the mannequin, let's say, that's where we're saying, like, make sure that you know how to do that in Rigify. It's not terribly difficult, but it is something that you should know, and those bones need a type so that they get a control if you need them to have a control. Otherwise, you'll just be sort of parenting them yourself into the hierarchy of the control rig to get exported. Or, well, I won't say to get exported, to drive the IK bones of the mannequin that were imported.
Unreal. You're exporting that skeleton. And so just remember that whatever information's on that skeleton, that's what's going into engine. So if that's already working in an engine and that's fine, then you're good. And then you're just using the controls from Rigify to move those. So just keep that in mind, that you're not actually exporting that Rigify control rig, although it may look like you're doing that. You're exporting that. And that's because that rig is automatically moved into that rig collection that we talked about last time. So that rig is just getting automatically moved. That root rig, which is, you can see that rig right there, is just getting moved in there. And so if that rig's working, it's moving correctly in Blender, then it should work in Unreal.
I want to add on to that as well too. If you're talking about taking a character out of engine, or some character that comes in with bones and weights, and you're like, oh, I need to add IK bones to this, our add-on is not going to facilitate you creating those bones. If the screen that James showed you, which is right behind him, you would need to bring in that character from engine or from wherever in an A pose and actually add those bones to that armature.
Yeah, we will not add bones
Yeah.
to a existing skeleton.
Yeah.
We just drive those bones.
Right. So if you determine that you're going to do an animal, and this is the example I used yesterday. If you're gonna do an animal and the animal is coming out of UE4 with no ear bones, and your animators are like, oh, I want those ear bones, then you're gonna have to bring that scale mesh into Blender, add those bones properly to the armature, take that scale mesh via send to Unreal, and that will work. Once you add those bones inside of Blender to that armature, you can use send to Unreal to update the scale mesh and the skeleton in engine. Then you can go and use the UE to Rigify process that we showed here today to actually rig up everything and add those ears. And if you've already got a template for the character, then you would load the template, update the template, and then, you know, make sure that that's exported as well.
Add in a few extra nodes
Correct.
and a few more meta bones.
To
and you should be
map
good.
all the controls, yeah. So that process, it's a little bit different way to think about, you know, those sorts of processes, because everyone is just sort of used to having, like, in more of an animated film capacity, where it's like, well, here's my character and here's the rig, and I'm going to reference it into a scene, or I'm going to grab it somehow non-destructively and animate this stuff and then render it. And so we're taking a much more technical sort of game engine being the owner of the process, and the DCC being more of a utility partner to the game engine.
And another way to think about this that maybe some of you guys have already thought of is this tool could be used in another way, because like with the mannequin character, when we hit that convert button and we bring over his animation, we have our Rigify deform bones that are now keyed and everything. We have the animation information we need. We could bypass the process that is used with that integrate to send to Unreal. We could weight everything to our deform bones, and we could throw away our source skeleton, and we could just use our new deformation skeleton, because maybe you wanted to pull off some mocap data, but you don't want to have basically a rig like this that you're kind of having to hop with a template back and forth. You could just, you know, if we need to pull this out one time and just extract some information from it, like animation information, we could do that, and then we could add our own weights, we could add more bones, and we could just customize it all we want from there.
Yeah, because we're already setting up the relationship to the deformed bones in Rigify, so moving those vertex groups over is very feasible in Blender.
Just look at your node names. Look at your node names, and you can use a copy weights modifier that they have, and you can just copy over weights.
Yep.
That's awesome. I think that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for coming on. We'll be back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks,
we'll
everybody.
Not saying goodbye just yet.
Oh.
Just wait a little. I have a little spiel at the end.
Oh, spiel away.
Yeah, a
spiel
little
away.
spiel. I already mentioned it earlier, but we do caption and put all the captions into a transcript file that goes up on the YouTube video. Just usually between 3 to 5 days after the stream goes up. It's done processing actually on YouTube. And so if you're looking for specific content, whether it's in any of our streams, and you're not really sure if we covered it or when we covered it, rather than watching the entire stream, you can go ahead and download the transcript file, Control F in there, and search for the key terms that you're looking for, and then find the timestamp right next to them. We do have a survey that we do every week. Feel free to fill it out. We appreciate your feedback on the streams, and there's also a section where you can suggest what we're to cover in the future on the stream. Everyone enters their email address, gets to be part of a t-shirt sweepstake, which is a nice cursive Unreal Engine t-shirt. I mentioned it, I think, first time last week, but we do have a new community page for meetup groups around the world. And so go to communities.unrealengine.com, and you can find a nice layout of upcoming meetups as well as meetup groups in your part of the world. If you have a little community locally that are working with Unreal and you're excited about getting together and possibly increasing the size of your community, and there is no meetup group in your area, there's a button right there on communities.unrealengine.com that says Become a Leader. And it's easy. You just sign in with your Epic Games ID, and you can request to become a leader. It's a simple form. You fill that out, you send it to us, and we will possibly get back to you regarding what it entails being a meetup group lead and how to get set up with Meetup. It actually ties, so the system is called Bevy. It actually ties into Meetup. So whether or not you are afraid of like, oh, but all my friends are using meetup.com, it actually ties in. And so when you make an event on Bevy and communities.unrealengine.com, it automatically propagates to Meetup, which is really nice. Not entirely sure if the comments go back and forth, but you should at least be getting email notifications if someone is asking a question. Make sure you check out our forums. There's a nice release channel, and that's a nice segue into the fact that we do spotlight 3 community projects every week. Do let us know about what you're working on, and perhaps you'll see yourself on the stream one day. It also goes on the launcher, which is kind of cool. Sits there on the right side for a week. Make sure you visit Unreal Slackers, our unofficial Discord. There are a lot of good conversations that happens there. If you're looking for just feedback on something, or you have specific questions where you want a more active, real-time conversation around it, feel free to use that's just unrealslackers.org. Make sure you visit and follow us on Facebook, Twitter. We also have a LinkedIn page with a lot of enterprise-related content. Make sure you check those out if you're interested in what's going on in the Unreal universe. The countdown video that we start every stream with, it's 30 minutes of development, sped up to 5 minutes. If you would like to capture that content and have it as part of the countdown for the stream, please go ahead and send that to us together with your logo separately. Do not composite it together, because we do want to add the little countdown that we have to it in the right side corner. Like I said, make sure to follow us on social media, and special thanks to Kay and James for coming on, doing another Blender stream. I know people are very excited about the tool, and don't worry, we'll get to them when they're ready. That's sort of where I should leave that. And I'd like to end the stream saying that remember bones and weights.
That's right.
Bones and weights. Next week we will be having Aaron McLaren and Ethan Geller talking about state of audio in 425. Some really cool new features coming out, the synesthesia plugin, and there's been some really amazing experimental work that's been done with the new features in 425 internally, so we'll be showing that off. And I think with that said, I wish you all an amazing week, and we'll catch you all next time. All right, bye everyone.
Bye.